for what you are about to receive. May the Lord make you truly thankful.
Lisa, I want some more.
What?
Lisa, I want some more.
More? Catch him! Snatch him!
Hold him!
Scold him!
Pounce him! Trounce him! Pick him up and bounce him!
Wait! Before we put the lad to task, may I be so curious as to ask his name?
Oliver!
Never before has a boy wanted more.
Oliver!
Won't ask for more when he knows what's in store. There's a dark, thin, winding stairway without any banister, which will throw him down.
It was a gigantic production.
It was huge.
Here's a lot of my memories. I was a musical director on that show, and I've done it 3 or 4 times before. And so my memories were Eric Sassman did the best marketing, one of his little advertisements that I've ever seen before, and we'll put it on this episode so we'll get a chance to see that. And
great.
I remember about 1,000 kids and just thinking, again, here's all our little munchkins who are going to be our stars coming in the next, they're going to do Rent the next time we do it. And the incredible talent of the Ceglio brothers, just the 2 of them, getting to see them play these 2 parts together.
Right.
In this episode, we're also going to talk to Andrew about what it was like to be Fagin and how he had to the things that he had to do to become that character. But a lot of what he talks about is things you've done. So how did you mold Fagin? I mean, how did you envision Fagin from Andrew Ceglio, of all people?
Andrew was, I think, in his early 30s,
Yeah.
very young to portray Fagin, which is typically someone in their late 50s, 60s, or whatnot. Andrew is such an honest performer that he can tackle just about any character. We talked a lot about not trying to age Andrew up to Fagin's, up to 60 or whatnot.
Yeah.
We really worked on Fagin being ill, Fagin being very sick.
Yeah.
And so we worked with our wig master, with Andrew, developing the kind of makeup and costume that just, his hair was falling out. And that way, because I didn't want to put a lot of makeup or prosthetics on top of Andrew as a performer. I wanted him and the talent that he has to create Fagin without having to fight through makeup. So we really just focused on the characters, who he was. And Andrew is very intuitive about that. And he gets very specific about what character he's playing.
Well, his brother played, Nick played Bob Sykes.
Bill Sykes. Yeah. Such a dynamic difference in those 2 actors. But Nick brought this just grounded bookwork to this kind of big musical production of Oliver. He kind of brought stability of the reality to what was happening to everybody. And that's just Nick's ability as a very intimidating performer.
What a great actor he is. I mean,
Yeah.
he's really, and then, Night at the Nutcracker, where he became Groucho Marx completely. And then he can be Bill Sykes in one piece, and then in another piece of Scrooge, he's Bob, the father of Tiny Tim.
Yeah, he was great in that. Such a simple, quiet performance.
But we had a great Oliver too. That he came out of the woodwork. I hadn't known that boy, Tanaya, and he worked really well with Andrew as Fagin and Oliver.
He was an incredibly sharp kid.
Was he?
When I first started rehearsing with him, the first thing that I did was just sit down with all the main characters and talk to them privately for an hour. and get their thoughts on the character, talk about what we want to do with the character. And I can't recall exactly how old he was, but I think he was 11 or 12 years old at the time.
He looked very young.
Yeah, he came in and sat down with me for an hour, and I was blown away at how articulate, intelligent, thoughtful he was about playing Oliver and who Oliver was on the first day of rehearsal.
Yeah.
He had this natural empathy on stage that just landed beautifully for Oliver.
Who can say what she may hide? Must I travel far and wide till I am beside of someone who I can mean something to?
Bree was great as Nancy. She's such a talented performer. You know, she can just about, she's just a triple threat.
But yeah, Bree was phenomenal in that show. She can do no wrong, really, on stage. I mean, she's carried so many of Cabrillo Stage's shows. You know, Cabaret was the last one that I worked with her directorially. Trevor directed that show, and I assisted Trevor on that. But yeah, Bree brought a lot of energy. She brought the fun when that show needed the fun, and then she could immediately go into the depths of what that character was struggling with on a dime, and it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking to watch her sometimes on stage.
As long as life is long, love him, right or wrong, and somehow I'll be strong. As long as he needs me, if you are alone, then you will know when someone needs you, you love them so. I won't betray his trust, though people say I must. I've got to stay true, just as long as he needs me.
Really happy to have with us Brance Souza, who is a choreographer for Cabrillo Stage and also one of the stars of Cabrillo Stage because he's been an actor in many of our shows. Welcome, Brance.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. It's nice to
Yeah.
see you.
Let's talk about Oliver.
Yeah, I love
So
Oliver.
I didn't have a lot of time in that show to be artistic and shaping, but I've conducted the show many times. So I know the show so well, and I know Dustin's great. I know you were great, and so that's kind of the way I handle it. So I feel like there's a little bit more you and Dustin working through a lot of this.
And that was my first show that I ever choreographed to that high degree. You know, I wasn't used to working with big orchestras or
Huge.
the amount of resources that we were able to have. And I was a young, scared choreographer at that time. I mean, I hadn't even finished school yet. Like I was still, in the mix. And, when Dustin and you guys emailed me, I was so excited to I'm like, okay, now I'm crossing over from being, in the shows, being just an artist. And now I'm on the creative team, which was a really exciting experience.
Well, Dustin and Trevor came to Cabrillo Stage kind of as a team as far as directing and choreographing, and they did a lot together, and then they I used them apart from each other a lot and everything. But when Trevor left and Dustin directed next time, the first person he asked for was you. Probably recommendation of you know Trevor. I mean,
Thank
you knew
you.
when to be simple, and you knew when to put in something that really wasn't. I don't know if you ever did put anything really that wasn't appropriate for the time. You captured the time. You did a lot of research.
Yeah, I think because movement vocabulary wise, I come from a very technical, I'm trained in ballet and, contemporary dance. But I'm also very interested in combining the two, combining the classical, classical musical theater style with a little bit of, more contemporized, feeling of movement, authentic movement. So just, I guess, adhering to a little bit of my, aesthetic, I guess you could say, as a dancer. We really ran into with Oliver was I was interested this time was adding, kind of like how Trevor did in Wizard of Oz with the fans and adding extra percussion that wasn't really with the music and kind of combining the two. I think that was really the only, I guess, quote unquote issue that we had. But I mean, we worked through it together, and I literally listened to some of the music from the soundtracks, and I get so emotional because I was so proud of everybody that worked on that show, because there was, I mean, we talked about earlier about the philosophy of, choreographers and directors and whatnot. And that was definitely a show where we all had different ideas of what we did. I remember when I first finished choreographing Consider Yourself, and Dustin's like, scratch the whole thing, redo it, let's add some stuff here. And I was like, oh, damn, like, it's like that, huh? Like, and then, we came back and redid it after talking about what he wanted to see. And I had a different take of what it should have been, and he had it, but we talked about it and had a meeting. And you know what? I look back and I'm like, wow, that was really, really cool about how, it literally went from something completely different to something totally different, but we both agreed on how it.
That's the way Dustin is. He has a way of, and so that must have been hugely scary for you. And you're
Oh, I was so scared. I was so scared.
stage, and he comes up and says he doesn't like what you're doing. I mean, when he says that to me, and I'm his boss, I feel bad, But I get it totally. The ballet is the basis, the basic training. It's the foundation, and the only way you can look strong as a modern dancer, even as a tap dancer, it's all forms. It's like learning to play your instrument correctly and then going out and playing some jazz or some rock or whatever, that kind of thing. And so, would you join me in saying that kids who really want to be great dancers really need to put in the work of ballet to gain that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think even speaking from my experience, when I did do Wizard of Oz, and talking to Trevor about my, we always talked about having the facility to dance,
Right.
but looking back on, some of the archival footage, and I watched myself, I'm like, how great could it have been also if I had had the training that I did now?
Yeah.
So I would definitely join you in saying that anybody who wants to have, some sort of dance background really needs to focus on ballet, because it's what allows you to do everything. You can't, like you just said, you can't do jazz, you can't do, rock or any of these other styles of music without having the classical, fundamentals.
Right.
You can't learn to spell words if you don't know the ABCs, point blank and period,
I'm going to move on then. So, how many children? Do you remember how many children we had in Oliver?
I think there was 34, and they range anywhere from ages 6 to like 12.
Yeah, and they were 34 is a massive amount of people to have on stage as a choreographer. And
not to mention the adults as well too,
And I watched you rehearse, and I watched you work with them, and you became that fun big brother. You developed a relationship with these children, and it all worked out well. Was there any troubles? I mean, did you have any predicaments that were?
I don't think so. I'm really, and again, this is why I get so emotional, because those kids worked so hard. They really. I luckily had Kara Johnson as a dance captain with me, and then working with Andrew Ceglio and a lot of and Bree as well too. There's a couple adults that were so mixed in with the kids as well too, that they also helped kind of rein people in a little bit. And then there was parents that we had as wranglers, like we do with most shows that kind of have side. But I was so impressed with their work ethic. I I had very, very high standards. And I remember this thing at the beginning of the workhouse show where they all had to, march in on the stage and then cross down at front stage center. And there was a couple kids that started, getting a little lippy because we'd spend so long on it. And I remember, was it Katie? Yeah, Katie. She was like, Brance, we gotta move on. We gotta get, and I'm like, no, like we're gonna get this down. So
Our
I
state
actually
manager, Katie Key, right?
yeah, Katie Key, yeah, and she's we love Katie Key. She's
We
great.
love
But
Katie Key.
um
We love you,
I
Katie,
don't
if you're out there.
say it again.
I said, we love you, Katie, if you're out there.
I know you're out there somewhere. I was very grateful to say that we didn't run into any huge problems. They were professionals just like the adults, and they worked so hard. And we had so many discussions of just being honest with each other. And I flat out told them, I was like, I expect a lot from you guys because you chose, this is what the real world is. I wanted them to really prepare for what the same training that I got. It was tough love. It was constructive criticism and how to make them better without tearing them down.
Yeah.
And they rose to the occasion. And I remember opening night when I saw them seamlessly just cross through each other, which is a hard feat to do, in tandem, in rhythm. And it looked so beautifully great. And then just to see their smile, I don't know, it was a great thing. So I was really blessed to be able to work with all 34 of those children. Let me say that again.
Is it worth the waiting for? If we live till 84, all we ever get is gruel. Every day we say a prayer. Will they change the bill of fare? Still we get the same old gruel. There's not a crust, not a crumb. Can we find? Can we beg? Can we borrow a cash? But there's nothing to stop us from getting a grill when we all close our eyes and imagine food, glorious food, hot sausage and mustard while we're in the mood, cold jelly and custard, peas, pudding and saveloys. What next is the question? Rich gentlemen having boys indigestion. Food, glorious food. We are anxious to try it. 3 banquets a day. Our favorite diet. Just picture a great big steak, fried, roasted, or stewed. Oh, food, wonderful food, marvelous food, glorious food.
They were absolutely wonderful in that. And just so the audience knows, it's very difficult working with children or animals, and it's worked out beautifully. Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's worked out beautifully if you can stand in a room of absolute chaos for a lot of time.
So also dealing with, the way children learn and how they react to certain things and, different abilities and disabilities, just making sure that everyone felt, I think for me, I wanted to make sure they knew that they felt safe and that this was a place that it's okay to make mistakes, but also learn from your mistakes. And Oliver has a lot, I mean, there's a lot of children, but it's also a lot of children the entire show because I mean it's centered around an orphan boy. So even when I didn't have the 34 workhouse kids, we still had the I think 12 or 14 Fagin boys, that were running amok and running around and all that kind of stuff too. So I think the best part about too is seeing where they're gone now. There's so many kids that have grown up to be really great artists themselves too, and it makes me look at myself too. I'm like, oh wow, like I was hopefully an integral part into and they are. I mean, they look back just like I did when I was young. They're looking back on you as me as well too, and thinking like, oh, like I learned a lot from that person. So that was, I don't know, just a good feeling to have.
Yeah,
and a good feeling to start off with that show in my career. To be say like, oh, that was one of my first shows that I did.
At the same time, we are teaching. These kids are going on. Those kids, those munchkins in Wizard of Oz were in Rent.
Yeah.
They were in Rent. So that shows you that they've even stuck with us through all of this. So it is an educational program. Well, Well, let me ask you one more thing. Working with those actors,
Mhm.
how did you feel getting to work with talent like that?
It was so inspiring and so amazing to be able to, speak with somebody that I had looked up to, like Brie and Andrew and Nick,
What an actress.
and then so many people in that show that I was able just to like tell them, okay, this is what I want to see, and then they just execute it like the professionals they are. So it was good. It was a great experience, and it helped me it helped me better myself and better my career. And I look back upon them like these pivotal moments of my life with these shows, and even just working with you and Alice and Dustin, I was, what was that, 2014? So I mean, that was six. I was still building myself, still learning how I wanted to creatively propagate things on stage and all that sort of stuff. So I take those skills and I take those experiences with me everywhere that I go and anything that I do. So I mean, career stage, I mean, I will say this on a leading note, career stage has been such a huge important part of my life, and I'm really grateful that I have you guys still as as my friends, my colleagues, my creative team, like to look back upon and say like this is how I came and this is who I came to be. So I'm proud to say that I'm part of the Cabrillo Stage family for sure, just because of stuff that we're able to do like this, and I'm able to work with so many inspiring people and so many hardworking and talented actors and dancers and singers. It blows my mind, honestly, sometimes that Santa Cruz is who holds, that place in my heart.
It's really been a pleasure to talk to you. It makes me sad because I want to work with you again, and I can't wait till that day comes again.
We're still trying to, inspire and, get on the same people's level, because it's right. It's a scary time right now.
Well, thank you so much for talking
Thank
to
you.
us today, and it's
Yeah.
really a real pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me too, John. Thank you so much.
Consider yourself at
Of course, you were the star, Fagin, and it was a real triumph. I mean, it was masterful. You were really in that character.
Fagin was a challenge in such a way where, well, first of all, it was realistically typically out of my age range, which tended to be kind of the norm with Cabrillo Stage. I mean, that's kind of how I started. I think Janie cast me as Mr. Beanstalk. I was 19. I was 20 years old playing a 50-year-old dude. For me, much like Little Shop, what spoke to me was the direction that Dustin wanted to take with the character, which I personally really enjoyed. Dustin really likes to work with actors who are willing to go there and explore every nitty-gritty detail about their characters and bring something genuine and realistic to the table. And with Fagin, something that we always used to talk about was just how people, because the show itself is kind of a vehicle for whoever's playing that character. It was built as that, but who is this guy really? And, what is he doing with this band of misfits? Oftentimes he's really portrayed as this wonderful, loving father. But in reality, he's doing what he needs to do to survive. He's a thief. And what I loved about Dustin's take is that he wanted to see a much more desperate, kind of disease-ridden Fagin, like gone so far down the rabbit hole of trying to survive that he's literally falling apart. I mean, that headpiece that they had me wear, where it was just chunks of, we did bruises and potch marks and things like that, and I did a lot of the old age and the spackle makeup, and he just really wanted a malnourished kind of jaundiced version to help me kind of justify these acts of desperation there were groans from the audience. I remember hearing times where people would go, ugh, because when I would inhale or something and I'd swallow a chunk of hair from my wig,
Yeah.
or it was stuck in my teeth, well, I didn't fall out of character. The first time I tried to kind of hide it and disguise it, and then I went, why would Fagin do that? He wouldn't care. So I just started picking it out of my mouth, and just like, and people were like, oh my God, oh gee, you know, and I'm like, but for me, I'm like, thank you, Dustin Leonard. I'm like, this is my character. This is who he is. He's, you know, and working with all the kids was really, was a lot of fun, but very, very challenging, because you essentially become this weird, like, it was like being a strange, weird version of like Peter Pan mixed with Captain Hook in charge of the Lost Boys, but this gross, disgusting. But it was so much fun because those young actors were so game. Like, it was really weird and a lot of fun to have this army of children who were just like so down with bringing everything they had to the stage and living in that moment, in that world.
Take a tip from Bill Sykes. He can rip what he likes. I recall he started small. He had to pick a pocket or two. You've got to pick a pocket or two. Boys, you've got to pick a pocket or two. Come along, my dears, come along. Dear old gent passing by, something nice takes his eye. Everything's clear, attack the rear. Advance and pick a pocket or two. You've got to pick a pocket or two. Boys, you've got to pick a pocket or two.
It's a wonderful challenge as an actor for me. But you know, Dustin and Brance both just made sure to create this wonderful canvas for us to play with. And Dustin in particular with the role of Fagin, you know, we could always talk about what was going on, and his favorite thing to do, because at that time he knew how I like to work. I was always open to his input, but at the end of the day, just tell me what you want and drop me in it and I'll do it. And he would just do that. If I was in group scenes, you know, he'd drop me off over in the corner and I'd do it. And I think opening of Act 2, we were staging it one time and a couple hours went by and I was just sitting there, you know, working things out. And he goes, "Hey, Ceglio, you okay over there?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, just doing what I'm doing." He was like, I could see you getting Fagin all sorted out over there. And that was one of the things that we love to do. We love to just like, okay, let's talk about it. Then now let's put ourselves there and let's just play. Let's just go. And that was an incredible experience as an actor. And then to obviously working with the kids was challenging at times, but they were fantastic to work with. Just fantastic.
Once again, thanks again for being one of the stars of Cabrillo Stage.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Murdock, looking at a production like Oliver, it's such a large travel show. Where do you even begin from a design standpoint?
The script is called Oliver. It's about Oliver. We talked about him, you know, kind of metaphorically falling through the cracks of society, and also kind of being in a state of continual falling. And that ended up affecting a lot of the scenic choices we made. But medieval cities, cities that, you know, start way back then, were actually three-dimensional.
Right, there certainly were a lot of exit entryways, cracks from the floor to the ceiling. It was kind of like rats could run everywhere in the set, I recall. There was a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, bridges above, staircases everywhere, staircases that could move, panels that could open, doors, that lovely kind of passerelle kind of thing that we added down the stage with the ramps.
I'm listening to Murdock talk about this, and I was looking at these images today, and that was actually one of the things that struck me. Oh yeah, I remember, you know, that little window that we had a thing through, and that trapdoor, and the little squares in the floor that were cut out, and the bridges above, and the elements that had to exist there, and all of that, and the giant doors. All these places where light could creep into the world through those cracks. Yeah, it's a lot, but you know, we're organized, paperwork-driven creatures. Allows us to be creative later, right? Because we're so well organized at the beginning. So when the world makes sense, visually, thematically, emotionally, it makes sense that Oliver is over there, stage left, under the table. For this little song, and it makes sense that the light is coming from over here to reveal him in this huge cavernous space. And in fact, the first moment that we realize just how big the space is could be the first moment that there's only one person on stage. You would think that would make it feel small, but it actually makes it feel huge. And you don't really realize that you're doing it until you're doing it. You just know what emotionally makes sense, and then it has this sort of visual impact too. And that just comes from having good collaborators and good storytellers.
I love working with Kyle. We've done several shows together, and I always feel like we have such a great collaboration. Because Kyle was like, oh, you know, if you move this, then I can get some light in here. And I was like, oh, right, I should do that.
So much of what we do is nonverbal. So it's not clear how collaboration is working, because sometimes you just kind of know, and that just is what just allows someone to sort of psychically work well with someone else. But, you know, at the outset, Murdock is the kind of designer who will call me or email me while he's drafting ideas and say, hey, I've, you know, been working for a month now, and I have these 10 ideas, and I want to run this by you. Starting to bring me in so that we can have those conversations about walls, or, you know, like, this is a scene, Dustin and I have talked about the scene, and I know that this is really important to him this way thematically, but it's always the case that scenery comes first, right? It provides the structure literally in the room. And lighting always comes last. I mean, we are the last piece of the puzzle that gets layered on, but hopefully it's sort of infused into the world and into the scenery, and not just stuck on top.
Kyle and I can talk. So like we have conversations that will last, you know, at least an hour, if not longer, and more so when we're doing a show together.
Where do you go to find the aesthetic, the visual inspiration?
If I'm going to design a show that takes place in a certain time and place, I need to try and absorb what that time and place is. And then the other category is inspirational, and that's thematic stuff. That's stuff that feels like the same moods and feelings and emotions and themes that are present in the script. And both of these things become, you know, I like to call them the visual vocabulary of the collaboration. Because if you look at an image and you look at an image and I look at that image and we all feel what we think is the same thing, like that, I mean, that's actually huge. And, you know, in theory, that will be something that also an audience will respond to and react to emotionally in the same way. And so we can kind of make this kind of word bank of stuff, you know, well, imagery like this means this for us, and imagery like this means this for us. You know, I think that theater is always happening right now. And I don't mean that literally necessarily, but I mean that everything that happens in a play, a musical, an opera, should feel as though it is happening now. It has to have that urgency.
I really think about the characters, actually. So it's because lighting design is all about how you see something, right? And it's not just where you look, but it's about how you see something. And so for me, it's how do the characters see this thing? And then once you start to understand that, and that's really, again, where collaboration with a smart director comes in, who can help you with that, and who can tell you how they think the characters see the thing. So my visual backlog really comes from, what does the world look like to different kinds of people? So what does the world look like when it's gloomy, or when I'm gloomy, even if the world is fine?
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that's sort of how I come at it.
And you say something interesting, Kyle. I've heard you say it a couple times about, like, if you're working with a collaborator and they say, like, the scene is too red or something, and you say, well, it doesn't matter if there's not a single red light turned on anywhere. It doesn't matter if that's the fact. Like, they are experiencing red. Like, that is what they are experiencing.
Someone much more experienced said it to me, but it's true. That there's no point in having a conversation or arguing with them, as I'm sure I did when I was a younger designer, but there's no red there. It doesn't matter. They're experiencing red. So figure out what they're experiencing.
Wow.
And fix it. Yeah.
I've worked on a lot of Cabrillo stage shows. I believe Oliver was the biggest.
First of all, working with Marcel was absolutely wonderful. I had a wonderful time working with him. I know we made some cuts. I maybe can remember like one or two. I feel like we didn't cut that much. One thing about the budgeting process, though, is I like how it focuses things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, continually, we should only be thinking about the stuff that really matters on stage, right? We can have some really beautiful things. We can't have all of the really beautiful things, if we want them all to be really great. So, what choices do we make in that process? I thought the show was beautifully directed. I think there are some photographs that I think were kind of all firing on all cylinders. Like, we were all doing the thing that we were supposed to be doing well. And it was all of us working together rather than like, one member of the creative team is carrying other members, right? Like, everyone was doing their job and doing it collaboratively, and it was beautiful. Another thing that I think was really, really great about this was one of the actors in your chorus, who also worked as a carpenter, several years later then came and was one of my graduate students here at San Diego State University.
Oh, I think that was Scott Boynton.
Yep. And he did great work. He just graduated. He did several scene designs and projection designs and film designs for us while at SDSU. And it was great to have him as a student years later with that connection.
What about you, Kyle? Was there any striking moments? I know you can be fairly critical of yourself as an artist sometimes.
I think the show in general I was proud of. And of course, yeah, you're always critical, we used to always say, you're never done, you're just finished. Because there's always one more thing that you didn't, and you're watching the show on opening night going, oh man, how did I not see that before? Because there's so much happening on stage, and we work, I don't know if people realize how quickly we actually work once we're in the theater. Like, that thing gets on its feet in about 5 seconds, and you really get to watch it all the way through, maybe 2 or 3 times before an audience sees it. And it's like on stage with the orchestra and the whole 9 yards. So it's very quick.
Right. Well, I know you said it's, there's a lot going on and it does happen very fast. And of course, with Oliver, we had 64 actors on stage with some enormous choreography at times. Brance was our choreographer on that show. And how much did you work with him, Kyle, in terms of the musical numbers?
Watching choreography, it is a lot of watching, and then it's a lot of, I actually will talk to the choreographer a lot when I am placing the cues on paper, like where I think they go, because they know the music so well, and they know the counts, and they know, they've lived with the music for so long, and they know the part of the music that they are accentuating. They know when they're amplifying it and when they're deliberately running counter to it. And they're also working with the director, especially a director like you, Dustin, who really views their choreographer, I think, as almost like an assistant director at times.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and so they really know what the intention in a piece of choreography is. So it's lighting, for the lighting to support that, I have conversations with them at that point typically. I really live in the music. Music is emotional, lighting is emotional, music is nonverbal, lighting is nonverbal. It has a tempo and a sense of time in the same way that lighting does. It has punctuation and texture, and it moves in the same way that lighting moves.
I have a more explicit duty to the text. because though sometimes I create scenery that is abstract, and even when I'm doing realistic things, I'm abstracting in some way. I am guided by and bound is not the right word, but I mean I have to be where the text is.
A lot of people refer to not just the set design, just the overall visual impact of Oliver as very operatic, which is unusual, I find, for a production of Oliver. Was that an intentional approach on both of your parts, or did it just end up creatively going that direction?
It was definitely not a conscious choice. We made artistic choices because of the people that we are, and that led us in a direction. It is, however, the story is almost like one continuous journey. And if you don't take people on a journey and that world isn't big and expansive, you're failing the piece. It's not a small story.
You really want to see it through Oliver's eyes, and the world is so big to him and so unknown that I think it makes it feel the scale so big. I know you have a very in-depth process of really peeling the show apart and really understanding it from an emotional point of view. How do you, once you've done that, how do you start to impart it to your designers?
For me, every designer is different. And so I tend to communicate a little differently depending on who the designer is and how they take information in. Murdock and I kind of held hands and walked down this, as you call it, Murdock, a rabbit hole of just finding textures, colors, palettes, shadows, light, and how that played an important part, or my feeling of the emotions of the show, the emotions of the character. So in some ways, Murdock kind of opened the door and said, this is how we should explore. And then from there, it just naturally evolved into a conversation. And that conversation would just kind of bounce all over the place about this scene, this character. What are we trying to say in this moment? What is the show trying to say? And then finding an emotional palette that was consistent, that created where the show was taking us emotionally.
I think when collaboration works really well, it's people sharing things that they're excited about with each other.
When you and I worked together, Kyle, on this show, I do know that one of the constant conversations that I think we had was creating that intimacy. Here Dustin and Murdock created this enormous, vast, open set, and then the director is coming to the lighting designer, say, "Okay, I just want it to be like a camera right on a tight close-up on Oliver's face here. How can you do that?"
I mean, it's like the red light on stage, right? There's no point in saying, Dustin, they're 40 feet away from the kid. He's 4 feet tall, and we've created this huge world. You say, okay, so my job is to understand what is it that you are intending here, right? And how do we get that across? Like, what is the emotional moment? What is the storytelling here? What do we need to get across? And that really informs the decisions. And I remember, in some of those moments, looking at what happens if you take the whole world away and it's just the actor, or what happens if you actually leave some of the world and it's the actor. Like what feels more lonely, what feels more like that close up. And sometimes the answer, depending on the situation, the correct answer is different. And we can sit here and try and articulate why, but you just know, it just feels, you just know that when you're marrying the visual with the music, with the lighting and what the actor is giving you and the whole thing, that this is the right answer.
I want to thank both of you for taking the time to walk down memory lane and revisit one of my favorite productions, certainly as a director, and one of my proudest productions that I was so happy with. Thank you for joining me, Murdock and Kyle.
Thank you, Dustin.
Much.
Join us next week when we discuss the Cabrillo Stage 2012 West Coast premiere production of Night at the Nutcracker. Director Andrew Ceglio, Skip Epperson, and I recall the challenges of casting talent and recreating the look of a vintage Marx Brothers production. and then adding the music highlighted by the Nutcracker Orchestra rising out of the pit. All this and more next Thursday on The Stars of Cabrillo Stage.